Paul, you're muted.
Sorry, folks, about that. I'm going to call the meeting for the Cumberland School Committee to order August 27, 2020 at 7:12 p.m. In accordance with Governor Armando's Executive Order 20-63 dated August 7, 2020, the Cumberland School Committee intends to conduct this meeting remotely. The public can participate in this meeting remotely, but not in person by calling area code 646-558-8656. And the webinar ID is 957-3715-7767. You can also join us on this Zoom program by going to the Cumberland School Department website and going under the events calendar. You'll find the complete link to this meeting where you can watch it on video. And the passcode is 076582. Thank you, everyone. And let's all, well, I'm not gonna say rise, but we have the Pledge of Allegiance. So I pledge of allegiance
to the flag
of the
of the United States of America and
to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. All right, next we have the approval of the agenda. Item number A, compliance with the governor's executive order 20-63 dated August 7, 2020. Discussion or vote whether there is public access to the meeting through adequate and alternative means. Mr. Chandler, you said the public is invited into the meeting?
Yes, they are, and there's a lot present.
Okay, thank you. So I need a motion on that, discussion and a vote, that there's adequate means.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair. Ray Salvatore.
Mr. Salvatore, that there is adequate means, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Collins. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, 7-0. Thank you. Next is our consent agenda. We have approval of minutes from the regular meeting on August 13th, 2020. We have the town hall meeting on August 17th, 2020. The approval of the minutes from the executive session from August 13th, 2020. We have communication in there from a letter that was sent to Governor Armando. And we also have personnel actions now that the superintendent is in charge of hiring employees moving forward. There is a list in your folder of the people, and I'll read it off because we have some people who are retiring tonight. So after 30 years, we have Patricia Monahan, a music teacher at Community and Garvin Schools. It's effective August 31st, 2020, after 30 years of service. We have another person, Rosemary Philbin. She's a paralegal professional at the high school, effective August 31st, 2020. And she's been here for 15 years, and I want to thank them personally on behalf of the school committee for the years of service for us. We have a leave of absence by Leslie Deslonier, Library Media STEM at BF and Garvin, Allison Gurin, professional at McCourt. And there is two new hires at the moment, Sonia Stenovich, special educator at North Cumberland Middle School Strive program, and Carolina Almonte, special educator at the high school Engage program. Those would be effective 9/9. And again, this is the superintendent's prerogative who he hires now, given the powers that the legislature is having school committees adopt. So unless there's something to pull out of the consent agenda, anyone have any comments in the consent agenda? Otherwise, we'll move forward. Okay, we're going to move forward. Thank you. So item number 5 is report out of executive session meeting. Did I hear something? No, okay. So we had an executive session meeting tonight, August 27, 2020. There were no votes taken during the executive session. We got some good legal advice. And I need a motion to seal the minutes.
Motion to seal the minutes.
Motion by Mr. Collins,
Second.
second by Mr. Fiorello. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it 7-0. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr.
Next.
DeMonica.
Yes.
Do we have to vote on the consent agenda?
I'm sorry, Mr. Fiorello, we do. I got lost on this personnel actions. So I need a motion to approve the consent agenda
So moved.
by Mr.
Second.
Fiorello, second by Mr. Collins. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it 7-0. Thank you. Next is the superintendent's report, reopening of school plan update. Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. I actually have quite a few things that I want to share with you this evening. And of course, everyone's attention is focused on the reopening of schools. And as you may know, the governor generally has her news conference, or her press conference, I should say, on Wednesdays. But this week, she had her press conference on Monday because she wanted to talk about the reopening of our schools and the opening of school for the 2020-2021 school year. And in that meeting, and I'm sure that many of those individuals in the audience heard her talk about the Education Operations Center that she has created. And this Education Operations Center is going to be supported by the National Guard, the Rhode Island Department of Ed, the Rhode Island Department of Health, the Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency, the Rhode Island Public Transit Authority, and the Rhode Island Department of Transportation. So all of these state agencies are going to be on hand 24/7 to support school districts with the reopening of school. And as everybody knows, we are going to be getting a decision from the governor on Monday, August 31st, as to which of the options school districts are expected to implement. There has also been a facilities, actually there are several, it's my understanding, several facilities readiness teams that have been created by the governor. These readiness teams will assess all of the schools in the state for the readiness to open. And of course, given the sheer number of schools in the state of Rhode Island that have to be assessed fairly quickly for the readiness for students on September 14th, there's a tremendous amount of work that has to be done. And, that question came up in one of our superintendent meetings. That is all of this going to be done in time for the start of school on September 14th? And the commissioner assured us that it would get done. So these facilities readiness teams are, in fact, I think they may have even started today. It's my understanding. And I have a meeting tomorrow. A couple of us in the central office have a meeting tomorrow with our point of contact that has been assigned to Cumberland. Her name is Kristen Marcotte. She will be meeting with me, and we'll get a little more information about how this is all going to unfold. So again, the big decision from the governor on Monday, August 31st. The next item that I would like to discuss, Mr. Chairman, is the ventilation study. I know that this is an issue that everyone is interested in. And given the age of not only schools in Cumberland, but in many schools across Rhode Island and quite frankly, across the country, ventilation is a concern given the fact that we are in this pandemic. The school committee very appropriately decided to get our facilities assessed, and a company was hired, E&E was hired to do an assessment of all 10 of our buildings. The that company and their two crews, their two teams of individuals that were going to all of our buildings and assessing our ventilation concluded their work today. They are working on a report that will be ready for us on Tuesday of next week. You know, one of the things, Mr. Chairman, that we've been asked, and I do think it's appropriate under the circumstances, if I may, you know, some folks have asked will that report be made public? I mean, it is, you know, we've talked about this very publicly, and it is a public document. We at the very least will, you know, provide an executive summary, if not, you know, the full report if needed. So, you know, we've learned a lot about ventilation over these last couple of weeks. And one of the things that we have to be most concerned about is the air exchange and cleansing the air that we all are breathing when we're in our buildings. And we have a responsibility to take whatever action is necessary to ensure that we are minimizing our risk to this virus. So the ventilation study, Mr. Chairman, will be available to us on Tuesday. Just a couple of other things that I wanted to share with all of you. As you know, we have surveyed parents and asked them what their intentions are for the start of school. We know that there are many parents who want their children to come back to school and have that in-person experience. We also know that there are a number of parents who have concerns because of the pandemic. And, you know, we've learned that there are parents who, you know, want to wait for a vaccine, and that's understandable. And I know that members of the school committee have been getting the same kinds of emails that I've been getting. And that is right now it's, you know, half the people want their children to physically come to school. Actually, it's 49%. And I thought this was amazing. You know, we had 4,996 responses to the survey, which is pretty impressive data. 49% of those folks want their children to come to school. 29% want distance learning, and 21% are waiting for the governor's decision on Monday. So also, the last thing that I wanted to share with you is the transportation survey. As you all know, we were really concerned about transporting students to and from school because of the social distancing guidelines that we are required to follow. The question regarding bus transportation, will your children require transportation? 60% of the respondents said no, and 40% said that they would need bus transportation. And the only thing that I would add there, Mr. Chairman, is that, you know, we did send out a letter, as the audience knows, you know, informing them that we need to ensure that the transportation policy is followed, in that students living within three-quarters of a mile at the elementary level, grades K to 5, anyone living within that walking distance must walk to and from school every day. Middle school students living within 1.5 miles must walk to school every day, and students living within 2 miles must, at the high school level, must walk to school every day. And, you know, we sent out a letter letting everybody know that, and we'll send out a more specific letter to those folks who live in those areas who have been getting transported, to let them know that, you know, they're going to have to either walk to school because of the walking distance policy, or get a ride from a parent or from some carpooling experience, sort of a thing. So, you know, just wanted to let everybody know. And of course, you know, the ultimate decision and whether students will be transported if they live within the walking distance will be safety considerations. So, and the police department makes that decision. So that is a summary of where we are. I know that that's a lot of information, Mr. Chairman, but there's a lot to talk about under the circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is our reports of standing committees. We have item number 8, payment of bills. Mr. Salvatore?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did not, Finance Fiscal did not meet tonight. We do not have any payment of bills.
Great, thank you. And next is
Thank
the Fiscal Management Subcommittee.
Yes, no new update, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we will be addressing SCPR 8 2020-15 later on. That normally would have come in front of fiscal, but it'll be held in open meeting tonight. Okay,
Thank you,
all
Mr.
right.
Chair.
Next is Policy and Procedure Subcommittee update. Mr. Fiorello.
Yes, policy and procedures has not met. As you can imagine, the central administration team is very, very busy with reopening plans. So we have not been able to get together.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fiorello. Next is Achievement and Communications Subcommittee, Mrs. Friedman.
It is the same story with the Achievement and Communications Subcommittee meeting, but a big focus of ours will be on how whatever reopening plan we decide upon, how achievement is impacted and how we can continue to make sure that our students are all achieving as they need to be, regardless of what the plan is.
Okay, thank you. And last is District Health and Wellness Subcommittee, Mrs. Bernardo.
Yes, we also have not met at this time, and hopefully as we start to move forward, we'll be able to revisit that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so next is the first of 2 comments from the public. If you would like to speak to the school committee, we have a 3-minute time limit, give or take. And you need to make yourself known to Mr. Chandler, and please state your name and address for the record, please. So, Mr. Chandler.
So if anybody would like to speak from the phone, they can use *6 to mute or unmute yourself, and *9 to raise their hand. If you're on a computer, you can just raise your hand from the application and we can answer you. I have Carrie Carlson has her hand raised.
Okay, Carrie, go ahead.
She's just coming in now.
Okay, there she is. Okay,
You're muted. No, Carrie, you're muted.
there we go.
Sorry about that.
All right.
Carrie Carlson, Newell Drive in Cumberland. I'd like to start off by acknowledging the tremendous amount of work our administrators and the teachers serving on the reopening task force have done to create the multiple plans for the reopening of school. These individuals, and groups were charged with an impossible task. They were asked to create plans that meet the educational needs of our students and meet the recommended health and safety guidelines. As you know, the beginning of the school year is a little over 2 weeks away. And despite countless hours of work, there are still many unanswered questions and many unresolved issues. Many of these issues center around health and safety. Many of the concerns are beyond our control, and many of the remedies would be financially crippling to the Cumberland School Department. Every day in my role as CPA president, I hear from educators who have concerns about the upcoming school year. I repeatedly hear how much they want to return to their students and their classrooms. Every educator I know will tell you that they feel in-person education is what's best for most children. But educators also know that health and safety must be the priority when deciding how to open our schools. Recently, the National Education Association of Rhode Island and the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers sent a joint letter to the governor, the education commissioner, and the director of the Rhode Island Department of Health. They outlined 8 criteria that must be in place before we can return for face-to-face instruction. I'm asking you to implement a plan that meets these necessary criteria. It is critically important to protect our students, our families, and our educators. Again, I am asking you, no, I'm imploring you to make health and safety the priority when making the very difficult and challenging decisions that are ahead of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the public that would like to address the school committee? Mr. Chandler, would you alert me?
Yep, I have a JD that would like to speak.
Okay, JD, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Bailey,
Really? I'm sorry. Here we go. Is that better?
not really.
Uh,
Oh, sorry. Okay. I'll just scream. How's that?
All right,
My name is Janine Dowling. I live on 4 Fairway Drive in Cumberland. I too am concerned with the health and safety for everyone, including my daughter.
Mr. Chair, I cannot hear anything.
Okay.
JD, you're gonna have to either get very close to the mic or something because members are saying they cannot hear you.
Okay, is this better?
Not really.
No. Okay, can I type my question in later? Or is there somewhere?
Sure you can. Yeah,
Okay. All right. I just wondered, why for the survey, why wasn't the option to go hybrid on the survey?
Mr. Mitchell, did you hear that?
She asked why there wasn't a hybrid option on the survey.
Right, yes. Thank you.
I think the question she asked is why wasn't hybrid an option? And I think that the survey said in person if possible.
Right.
Hybrid is in person, so it's implied that you are going in person. Because I don't think anybody expected that we're going full tilt. So it was either going to be a distance option or a hybrid option. So I think
That you're correct. So an in-person option would include the hybrid model.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chandler, is there anyone else?
Yes, it ends, there's no name there. Oh, they just withdraw there. And we've got a Galaxy S9 Plus with their hand raised.
A Galaxy, all right, Galaxy
I'll
X9.
have to state the name.
Hello?
Yeah. Hi,
Could
can
you
you guys
state
hear me?
your-
okay?
Hi, yeah, we can. Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, Laura Canavan, 63 Iroquois Road.
Hello, Laura.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I just wanted to give a very brief hello to the group. I'm a nurse practitioner. I'm with the Army National Guard, and I'm a part of the committee that will be meeting with Cumberland tomorrow. And hearing all these health concerns, we're going to be applying all these to work within the schools to identify those needs and to help give all of the LEAs a voice and bring those up to the proper state agencies that needs to be addressed. So just wanted to say hello, and being a Cumberlandite myself. So I look forward to working with everybody moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mitchell, is there anyone else? I mean, not Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Chandler?
At this time, I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, thank you. All right, so there's no one else from the public, so we'll move on to new business. We have discussion and/or vote on reopening of schools. So, Mr. Mitchell, do you want to take this one, or do you want the school committee to take it?
Well, I think under the circumstances, it's appropriate for the school committee to share what, you have been discussing.
Okay, well, for the public out there, correct me if I'm wrong, we've had an executive session tonight where we have received some legal advice in regards to whether the school committee may or may not select a plan that may go against the governor's recommendation, and legal advice is that the school committee makes the decisions for Cumberland. And then the other discussion we've had tonight was with E&E Systems, they're still evaluating our schools. They gave a general idea of what they've been encountering tonight, and their report will not be available until Tuesday. I know the superintendent has recommended that we wait until we have the report in hand before making a complete decision which way the school system will go. There was a
Mr. Chair.
lot of this, yeah.
Just for the
Yes.
public's concern, could you explain exactly what E&E is looking at, just so they understand?
Sure, E&E
Thank
is
you.
looking at all the ventilation systems throughout the district. They're looking at anywhere from 25% or more of the ventilation systems in every school. They're looking at air conditioning systems. They're looking at unit ventilators to see if they're drawing air in correctly and expelling air correctly. They're looking at rooftop circulation to make sure motors are coming on to pull air out of the building and things like that. So they are looking at that throughout the school district. They believe they will have the report to us in hand on Tuesday with recommendations for each school how to resolve the some of the air circulation issues that have become a major concern throughout the state. They have some recommendations. They will have recommendations on what type of equipment that the school department should purchase for these areas so that we can ramp up bringing children back to the school district. And so their report will not be here until Tuesday. We have the governor giving us her recommendation on Monday. During executive session tonight, we had a lot of back and forth between school committee members in regards to this matter and speaking with Mr. Adams, our attorney, about what we could and couldn't do. So that's basically what has happened tonight. The superintendent would like us to wait until, I believe it's Tuesday, to listen to these recommendations from the state, but every indication with the members tonight is health and safety is the #1 issue that's top of our list for a priority to bring our children back to school. Mr. Collins, did you want to add to this?
I do. My concern is that, it's August 27th. We can't wait till August 31st. The decision was supposed to come down August 17th. Parents just want an answer, but I think the fact that the governor keeps moving the goalposts on us, we just found out Monday, National Guard is going to be involved. I think we need to come up with a plan tonight. We need to double down on that plan for the time being and make it the best plan possible. We spent the whole summer, exploring different options, hybrid models, et cetera, et cetera. But, I don't think we can keep it safe. Our #1 job is to keep the kids safe. And I don't think, and the faculty for that matter. And I don't think we're in a position right now to do that. There's so many unanswered questions. Every week it's something new. I really think that we have to just focus on making remote learning the best it possibly can be. I know Mr. Damana and Mr. Mitchell have a plan in place for that. But I do want to add one part. I think it's imperative that if we do start distance learning, I think it's imperative that we address the needs of high needs individuals and get those children into the classroom as soon as possible, because they're the most vulnerable, they're the most at risk. And, I feel like we are at the point right now where we need to make a decision. So I'm going to make a motion to start the year with distance learning.
Okay, that's fine. I wish whoever makes a second would be a second for discussion, so all school committee members could be heard in this matter, please.
Yep.
So who's going to second this?
Mark has his hand up.
All right, Mr. Fiorello?
Yeah, I'll second for discussion. As some of you know, I've been touring the schools, visiting with principals, visiting with teachers, and touring the buildings. This week, I was able to visit community school, which already had a population issue going into this pandemic, and this is not helping in any way. I also visited the preschool this morning, and also was able to walk around with Mrs. Coughlin over at North Cumberland Middle School. And there are a lot of issues. There are a lot of issues about the ventilation, about all the things that have been found out not to be working. Exhaust fans. There's a question as to whether or not the cafeteria at North Cumberland will be able to actually be used without maintenance work being done, which who knows how long that'll take. To echo Mr. Collins, I agree 100% that the only smart choice here is to open the school year with full distance learning. And then once they have that decision, our central administration and all the building administrators and their staffs can prepare to provide services to special needs students, high need students, whether it's ELL population, what have you, and then make a plan to hopefully do a slow rollout through the autumn of bringing students back into the building into some kind of form. I think what we need to do is we need to really just make our decision based on the health and safety of our students and staff, which is what the state law charges us with. And once that decision is made, then we do our best to provide the best teaching and learning environment that we can. And then we have to readdress the issue, we have to reassess the issue sometime in a couple of months to see where we are. So that's my
Okay,
2 cents.
Mr. Fiorello, is there any other school committee members that would like to speak on this matter? Well, hold on, Mr. Collins, Mr. Salvatore?
Well, thank you. Mr. Chair, I would like to, Superintendent Mitchell, just for the record, to give his quick opinion in regards to this vote that we're about to take.
We could go ahead, Mr. Mitchell, if
As I have mentioned on countless occasions, that we have been sort of frustrated with the fact that a decision has not been made. I've also stated publicly, certainly with all of you, school committee members, that from day one, I have been in agreement with most of my colleagues across the state, and it's not just the state of Rhode Island, by the way. It is across many states and major cities that the best option would be a hybrid model. However, that being said, there are lots and lots of really significant challenges that we would have to address, given the short amount of time that we have before September 14th. And I do think personally that the most significant factor right now is ventilation in our buildings. And based on the preliminary information that has been provided, and we'll get the report on Tuesday, but based on the preliminary information that has been provided, we do have some issues with ventilation that will need to be addressed. And the question is, and I believe there are other schools, districts in the state that need to address this issue as well. So I do think it would be helpful for us. I'm just speaking for myself. I do think it would be helpful for us to have that information, to make an informed decision. So I mean, as Mr. Demotica mentioned, I would appreciate having the report in hand on Tuesday to solidify our position. And however, if I, were asked to make a decision right now based on the information that we have and based on the preliminary information that has been provided by E&E, the business that is doing the ventilation audit, I would say that we need to get these issues resolved before we bring students and staff back. And once we address those issues, then I think everyone would be comfortable with bringing everybody back. So as I mentioned earlier, I would be more comfortable waiting for the report, but certainly I would respect a decision of the committee based on, the decision that they make this evening.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Collins, you had your hand up.
Yeah, and I also, one of the advantages of this as well is if we start to get distance learning, this will put the virtual academy to rest, as we talked about. So there will be no hybrid versus virtual academy. If we all go distance, then parents who selected the virtual academy will also fall into that distance category. And as I've told any parent who asked me, I personally believe distance learning is superior to virtual academy, because you're as in the spring, the students will have their assigned teacher. It won't be a potpourri of people who have pre-existing conditions staying at home and just kind of thrown together. This is going to, I think what we need to do is model the classroom. Again, take what we did in the spring, and I think we did it very well in the spring. But I think there's absolutely room for improvement. But if you think of the optics too of going back to school in a couple of weeks, if you've ever been to a community school in September, it's stifling. So even with all the PPE gear, and I don't like the idea of a 7-year-old sitting in a classroom all day with a mask on when it's 90 degrees in the classroom with fans blowing or whatever ventilation we have. I don't like the idea of the National Guard standing outside our schools. That's not what we do. If we need the National Guard to open schools, they did it in the 50s and 60s. It was because of segregation. You know what I mean? I don't like the look of it. So I think we need to move forward with virtual.
Okay, Mrs. Bernardo.
And also just a point, if we did go in person with a hybrid model, we would still be having the same concerns of students being home, at least for half the time. And also with the discussion of in person, most people assume that we'll all end up back home again anyway within a certain period of time. So we don't know how long it would actually last. So it just sounds like it's a strong push to get as many people back in the buildings as possible, but on a moment's notice, we may all be back home anyway. And then we may be scrambling again. Everyone will be scrambling again to try to deal with that. So, I just wanted to also illustrate that point. And also, the standards that I think that the state has for reopening schools, I believe are lower than the standards that they've been using to reopen the state as a whole. And I don't think that that is in the best interest of our students and teachers.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fiorello, you had your hand up again?
Yes, we've been talking about ventilation, but walking through the schools and seeing the classrooms that have been set up, quite honestly, I think it's a fantasy to have kids 3 feet apart and think that they're not going to, in some way, contaminate themselves if we have one sick kid, and we know there is going to be. Plus, there's the reality that all of the symptoms that have to be checked for kids to be then isolated and a parent come and pick them up. If you've spent any time in an elementary school, almost every kid has these symptoms. So we're going to have an overflow of kids waiting to be picked up from their parents. That in itself is going to be scary for all the kids in the building. Plus, you're going to have teachers, especially in the special ed programs, that are going to be wearing face masks and face shields and scrubs over their clothes. It's scary. People keep talking about the mental health of kids and getting them back into the classroom. There is nothing about the start of this school year that's going to resemble a normal school day. To think otherwise, quite honestly, is a fantasy. The kids won't be able to talk to each other. They won't be able to play with each other. They're not going to be able to play with most of the toys. The sensory bins are going to be all different. Everything's going to be wiped down constantly. You're going to only allow one student in a bathroom at a time. It makes no sense. We have to do what's best and make a decision.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have a comment? I do have something to say. Go ahead, Mrs. Waters. Yeah. Heidi, we can't hear you. Sorry. All right, well, I'll make my comment here and then we'll go back to Heidi and Mrs. Friedman. Speaking with the superintendent tonight, he did indicate that the mayor has been gracious to start using the $83 million bond money to work on some of these issues with the ventilation in our school districts. There will be certain times that finding the HEPA equipment, whatever they think we're going to need, like every other school district in the state, they're all searching for the same equipment. So we're gonna have some issues in regards to that. But he was gracious to, tell us we can start, go in front of the building committee and get some of this work going. And that'll be a big help to getting these buildings and classrooms open. We do know some classrooms will not be able to be used. We know some nursing areas won't be able to be used as well. It's not how we open up a, school system. And I'm, 100% sure that the governor's going to change her mind again. They can't give us the basic answers when they say they're going to provide them to the school district. So I think we need to move forward and not wait for the governor in regards to this matter. Mrs. Friedman, and then we'll go back to Mrs. Waters.
I think it's important that everyone understands that each person on the school committee, there's nothing, I don't know. I don't think there's anything about this decision that's easy. I don't think that there's any, it's complicated. Everybody knows that. I feel like I'm not totally ready to decide on full distance learning without more details. I think we have to, if we say we start the year remotely, are we saying we start that the whole year is remote? What does really good distance learning look like? What will it be like at each school? The way the high school implemented it last year in the spring was different than the way the elementary schools implemented it. I would want more details to ensure that the distance learning model is going to be the best that it can be.
Okay.
It's a tough decision. And just, in full disclosure, my daughter's a rising junior at the high school. And like probably most of the kids, is dying to get back to school. That does not mean, and I don't want to make a joke about that, but that does not mean that is the reason to send kids back because they want to get back and to be, with their friends. But I do worry about the achievement gap. And I worry about the achievement gap that happened in the spring. And I worry about it in the fall. And I worry about it, for the kids who are getting ready to apply to college and going off. And, in some ways, I wonder whether it'd be better if we'd had a whole redo on the school year and everyone just stayed in school another year. Because this is difficult, and I also said earlier, I dropped my son off at the University of Maryland to take all of his classes online. And we've been seeing also, to what's been happening at colleges, not the same, but we've been seeing what's been happening and which would say you should do distance learning. But the distance learning has to be really, really good. And when I look at the letter to the governor that Carrie Carlson mentioned, in terms of opening schools, there isn't anything in here about distance learning, but it talks about all the things. Is there R value under 1? The answer is yes. Is there rapid testing and response? The governor's supposed to talk about that. Are there successful air quality inspections, like Mr. Mitchell said, and we're going to find out on Tuesday. We know now, even though we haven't seen the details, that there is not successful air quality in every classroom. So that's part of it. Are masks required? Yes. Social distancing and desk spaced at least 6 feet apart? The answer is yes, if you're in a hybrid model. Stable groups of 15 and alignment. In the hybrid model, if half the kids are going into the school, Mr. Fiorello, I believe I've been told by them that you could keep them 6 feet apart. If that's not true, then that's another issue.
In the classroom, most are 3 feet apart.
But if it's a hybrid model and only half the kids are coming in, I've been told by the administration that they would be 6 feet apart. And it said it in the FAQ too, right, Mr. Mitchell?
That is true. That is correct.
Yeah, that's a hybrid model. I'm not talking about going back 100%. And then the health precautions of daily temperature checks and the adequate and safe means of transportation. And we talked about busing and how 60% of our population said that they don't need busing, and we know what the state is saying about that. So there are these things that, potentially, and many of these things could be in place, but it still doesn't get at what is the best achievement teaching and learning model for students. And that, so how do we get the right combination of everything? How do we get the right combination of being safe and having good sound instruction for all
Okay.
grade levels?
So let's try Mrs. Waters again, then we'll go Mr. Collins.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
I took my earbuds out. I just have a couple of comments, and I think it is really incumbent on me to provide a rationale for a vote if we're going to vote. And I want nothing more than to get our kids back into school. I also have a high schooler and a 8th grader, and they want nothing more than to get back to school with their friends. I think it would be a disservice for us to, like Karen had mentioned, just because they want to do it, it may not be the best decision. The logistics of having the kids in school, even if it's a hybrid model and we don't have all the kids in school, just the logistics alone of having them in the school is untenable. There's an enormous amount of equipment that we would have to purchase, the sanitizing and all the cleaning supplies, PPE that we would have to provide. And we're hearing every day about more and more schools that are going back to school already and having to close within days. So if we were to invest all that money, which we don't even know where we would get that money, by the way, which we all, we've had the budget discussions and we're already, hurting. Those costs would be sunk costs. So now we've invested all this money and then we have to send all the kids back home anyway. That doesn't seem like a good decision to me. I'm hopeful that this won't be a long-term distance learning, that as Karen had mentioned, if we have the exit criteria identified, what is it going to take for us to get back into the school, and let's work to make that happen. I just think it's unrealistic to think that we can just go back into school and hope for the best, because hope is not a strategy. We need an actual plan. I also
Okay.
agree as far as what the achievement criteria is, and for making sure that we don't lose track of all the good things that we've done in Cumberland. The distance learning plan will have to be very rigorous and well thought out and well coordinated. And I know our administration is working hard on that. They've been doing that for a long time and putting these plans together. But it definitely will need to be an improvement from what we did, having to turn it around quickly in the spring. Yeah, that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Collins, you had your hand up again.
Yeah, thank you. Mrs. Freeman and Mrs. Waters both talked about achievement. I think we're inevitably going to face, well, you say achievement. I don't really know if you're talking test scores, then, I think we have to, well, hopefully the state does the right thing and cancels RICAS again this year as well. But I mean, I think there's going to be regression, and Mr. Damano has mentioned this before, but what's our focus? I mean, achievement is important. Obviously, we made great, but when you have 200,000 students so far this year, nationwide testing positive for coronavirus, and it's not even September, I think the public health emergency obviously trumps any sort of achievement gaps that we're hoping to kind of close. And there will be time. I mean, we'll regress, and then we'll fill the gap, and we'll get to where we need to. But it's all for naught if everybody's sick. And we talk a lot about students, but the teachers are going to be sick, and it's going to be a mess. And if we're home, there's a better chance with good remote learning for us to close the achievement gap than if we're going hybrid. Somebody gets sick, we close for 2 weeks. We open up, we close for 2 weeks. I think the continuity of a distance learning plan is more productive then every Friday it's uncertain whether the school's open on Monday. Because I think schools, if they open in a hybrid capacity, it's just going to be open, close, open, close. And I think if we vote to do remote learning to start the year, I think I'm confident we're making the right decision.
Okay. Anyone else in the school committee have a final comment in regards to this matter? Mr. Collins has made a motion to go into virtual learning, remote learning, virtual learning, however you want to put it. Mr. Fiorello has seconded for discussion. Is there any further discussion in this matter? All right, hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote on Mr. Collins' motion. Mr. Collins?
Aye.
Yes. Mr. Salvatore?
I'm going to vote nay. I have to support the superintendent on this one. Difficult decision, but
Right.
I support the superintendent. I'm a nay.
Mrs. Bernardo?
Aye.
Yes. Mrs. Friedman? You're muted. What was that?
I am voting no on this date, August 27th, because I feel like I still need some more details of the whole plan.
Right.
And tonight I vote
Okay.
no.
All right, no problem. Mrs. Waters?
Tonight, I vote yes, and I also look forward to hearing the details of the plan.
Okay. Mr. Fiorello?
Yes.
Mr. Fiorello votes yes. I'm torn in this, and with the superintendent, we ask him to lead the school district. I'm all in favor of going virtual learning, but like Mr. Salvatore, I think I need some more information. I'm going to vote no, but it passes on a 4-3 vote. So the public can start to make plans that we're going to start off the school district in virtual learning until we get a better handle on what we need to do to get these schools open for ventilation, so that no one, as the governor says, someone's going to get sick in your school district. That's something that I can't agree upon in regards to that. So it passed on Karen voted no, Ray voted no, I'm sorry, it passed on a 4-3 vote. Thank you. Mr. Mitchell, do you find it beneficial if we would have a meeting on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week that we can review the E&E report and then review the recommendations by E&E for opening certain schools? And maybe we can get a more detailed plan from Mr. Demona's office, if all possible, in the special ed department on how we'll implement this going on September 14th.
My initial thought would be, since we're getting the report from E&E on Tuesday, at least that's the goal. We're assuming that we're going to get the report on Tuesday. We would need some time to digest that report. I would suggest, using, Tuesday and Wednesday to do that. And I would suggest perhaps a meeting a week from today. That's just a suggestion. And you know what, it's in all likelihood going to take us, some time to solidify the distance learning plan, given the fact that the school committee has voted in favor of distance learning. So I would recommend, without having consulted with our team, that Thursday would be a better day to do it. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, any special time that you think we should start?
I think any 6 o'clock is always, I think, a fairly good time for us to meet.
All right, all our members here are present, so they hear that we'll have a special meeting on September 3rd to review the E&E recommendations. We'll hear we'll know about the governor's recommendation, and we can talk about a more rigorous start to the school year until we can get back into the classrooms, okay? Okay, moving on, we have discussion and a vote to approve homeschool instruction request for the 2020-2021 school year. That information was in your drive. There's approximately 4 pages of homeschooling requests that we have that which we just approve with no problems whatsoever, but we all need to understand that's about $1 million in loss of state aid to the school district unless we can convince these parents that the education we're going to provide to them would certainly be superior to what they may do at home. So I need a motion and a second to approve the homeschool request.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to motion to table it in the hopes that maybe if we have more time, maybe some of the parents who signed up for homeschooling may change their mind, knowing now that we're starting off distance learning.
Mr. Collins, I don't think we can do that.
We
I
can?
mean, we
Okay. We can?
we
Alright.
have never
Okay.
tabled a homeschool request. Mr. Fiorelli, did you figure out?
Yeah, I'm sure that either Mrs. Duncanson or Mr. Adams can speak to this, but I believe that us approving the homeschool request is more of a exercise more than actual, function, I guess.
Right, well, I agree. I think it's just a function of what we do. We've approved homeschool up until the last week of June for the last school year. So, they are out there and we have never tabled a homeschool
Mr. Chair,
request. Yes.
To-
Mr. Salvatore.
I kind of agree with Mr. Collins. Can we get Steve Adams to weigh in on this?
Sure. Mr. Adams, are you here?
I am. Oh, hang on. Am I? Do you hear me?
Yes, we
You're
can.
good.
It's entirely up to you from my perspective, whether you table this or not. I mean, it's unusual to do, but under the circumstances. There is one thing that I did want to mention with respect to your vote. There was some discussion about what to do with special populations. And so with respect to the vote that was taken, and if the school committee's intent is that the superintendent and his team come up with a plan that while it is virtually virtual, but there may be some students in special populations who may attend. I don't know if that was your intent or whether you were thinking of that or you considered it and rejected it in making the motion that you made and accepting it. But I just wanted to highlight that because those students, that may be an issue that you may want to be able to be nuanced on, or you may not. But I figured I would raise it while we were here this evening, rather than letting it go and have the meeting end before there could be any further discussion of that issue.
Okay.
Mr. Adams, should we finish this discussion on what Mr. Collins made a motion on? Because if so, I'd like to second Mr. Collins' motion on tabling
Yeah,
this.
that would be great. But I figured while I had the floor, I would say my piece and be
Okay.
done so I could go back on.
That's fine. Then we'll go back to item number A again to make sure it's done right. So item number B, discussion and a vote to approve homeschool instruction request for the 2020-21 school year. Mr. Collins made a motion to table. Mr. Salvatore has seconded that. Is there any other discussion in regards to this? Hearing none. A roll call vote, please. Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Salvatore,
Yes, I support tabling it.
and Mrs. Bernardo,
No.
Mrs. Friedman,
No.
Mrs. Waters? No. Mr. Fiorello?
No.
No, and the chair votes no. This is something we've never done. So it fails on a 5-2 vote to table.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Mr. Fiorello makes a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bernardo. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Salvatore,
Yes, I mean, it's going to approve, so. that's fine.
Mrs. Bernardo,
Yes.
Mrs. Friedman,
Yes.
Mrs. Waters, Mr. Fiorello?
Yes.
Yes, and the chair votes yes. That passes on a 7-0 vote. And again, we had discussion earlier tonight about reaching out to those parents to see if we can have them come back to the district. Okay, next is something that we would have heard in fiscal, but it got changed tonight. We
Mr.
have
Chair,
dis-
Mr. Chair, should we go back to the issue, Mr. Adams?
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
So
let's
I
go
think
back to that.
I'm gonna make a motion. I think I know what Mr. Adams is saying. You can stop me. I'm gonna make it a motion that the district start the year off with virtual learning, but with an emphasis on getting high needs special ed ELL populations in school face to face as soon as safely possible.
Okay. Do I have a second on that one?
Mr. Chair, I'll second for a discussion.
Go ahead, Mr. Salvatore.
Mr. Adams, I just want to make sure we're following legal protocol here. This is, we can make this motion for what Mr. Collins is making a motion for?
Yeah, I mean, it could be done as a motion. It could have been done as a motion to amend, but you can always add another motion. You guys are the committee. So.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure.
Absolutely. Just so for procedure, if nobody seconds the motion, it dies. If the motion gets seconded, then it goes on to the next step. If it gets voted down, a new motion could be tried.
Okay, so I second. Mr. DeMonica, seconded.
Are we
Okay.
under discussion? Are we under discussion still?
We
Or
are,
no?
Yes, go
Mrs.
right ahead.
Friedman.
So this is why I voted no initially, because we need more details of what our plan is for the school committee to vote on the plan. So if I were to vote on this, I would vote no, because we still don't have the details to know what is the right thing to do.
Right.
And even with Dr. Santa, whether that's in person, if that is her recommendation to do that in person, or to do part of it in person or virtually, I know no more about that than I did when I voted 20 minutes ago.
Right. Just one night before we address you, Mr. Collins. Dr. Santa, do you have any comment in regards to this?
Yep, I sure do.
Okay.
Hang on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So because things have been so unsettled, my staff and myself have been creating plans regarding multiple different scenarios. So with this vote, I would, every student is individual. We do have individual education plans for each one of the students, but we have almost 281 approximately students who are in specialized programs. That means that they had a higher level of intensity of service needs, anywhere from 6 hours in a day down to probably like 2 to 3 hours worth of service a day, within a day, 5 days a week. So in very general terms, because we will need to make a lot of individual decisions for individual students. In a very broad sense, what I would propose for special ed would be that Monday would stay a distance day, and that depending on the grade level and the program itself. For instance, some of our programs are inclusionary based and some of our programs are more direct instruction based, that students would be in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, depending on what that program looks like. I do have this outlined and written down in our continuum of services. I just shared it with the superintendent, and I had shared it with the assistant superintendent earlier today. So I would propose that. The reason why I would want to keep Monday a distance day is that it takes a lot of prep and a lot of work for our teachers to get high quality distance learning materials out there, especially when it's differentiated among multiple grades and multiple skill levels, because even within a program, we can have multiple levels of students in need. So I do have recommendations for each one of the continuums, with the nuance being that I do know many parents have already decided they're not sending their kids in because of the concerns around illness. And I also know that there are some students that we may recommend that they come in for 4 days a week, and some families may decide that they only want them in for 2 days. I have been I met with our special ed advisory committee last week. We had a really robust meeting of over 50 parents. I met today with our trade program, which are 18 to 22-year-old students in transition, and talked about how we can provide some of these services virtually, and to also talk about the flexibility of thinking about coming into school live face-to-face a little bit differently. So I'm confident that we can create options where we're working with individual families regarding what's best for their child, but also within a structure. To me, it'd be run very similar. What I would propose is that it's run very similar to extended school year. I think dependent on the report that we're getting around Tuesday, around the safety of our buildings, that we look at what building has the best ventilation and maybe concentrate that building or several buildings or several classrooms to identify. And that's where the classrooms that we use for our programming, very similar to how we run our extended school year summer program. So I have more, I could expand on that, but I think that gives you a general feeling. I feel very confident that we can meet the needs of the kids in a live one-to-one venue. I will tell you, many of my teachers of these populations of students want to be in with their kids. And I've been receiving, my phone is blowing up. I need to be in with my kids. I need to be in with my kids. With the understanding also of maintaining safety. Obviously, that's our first concern. But at the same point, when you have a student who is nonverbal, or if you have a student who needs significant amount of service, virtual is really hard. It's really, really hard. It's hard on the kids and it's hard on the families. So
Thank you.
I can expand and ask any additional, but that's just my initial thinking on this issue.
Well, we appreciate it. We're not the educators. Mr. Collins, go ahead.
I just want to address Mrs. Friedman when she mentioned the lack of specifics. We've spent the entire summer coming up with multiple scenarios. Now that we've decided tonight that we're going to pursue distance learning, we can now get down to the specifics. We voted just tonight, so that it's of course we don't have specifics yet. But if we wait till for Governor Raimondo on Monday, that's 4 days we're behind. We make this vote tonight, we get started in the morning, and we're 4 days ahead of everybody else if we wait any longer. It's just
We already voted. You already voted.
But
So-
we do have to amend this, correct though? With the special ed population?
Mr. Collins,
you don't
I
have to.
mean, I think the superintendent gets the gist of what we would like to see happen with the children that need these services. And I don't think we need to cast another vote. I think they'll implement the plan with the special ed children or any other child that they may deem, to need to come into the schools or whatever it may be. So I think we're okay with this, and they've got the message in regards to this. Okay.
At this point, there's been a motion and a second, I believe. So
Okay, so I need someone to withdraw their second. Mr. Salvatore, I believe you made the second for discussion.
Before I do, Mr. Chair, Mr. Fiorillo, I think has a question if you want to accept. No, okay. Mr. Adams, this is acceptable that I withdraw my motion and that Mr. Mitchell will still take general direction to work with the special education department? Need a little guidance here. I just want to make sure you're on mute, by the way. But I just want to make sure that we're doing everything per the Attorney General's office.
Well, it's not the Attorney General's. You guys go by Robert's Rules of Order, but I have to tell you, you're so far into Robert's Rules of Order, I'm beginning to wonder whether, I don't know if you can withdraw your second. I think the movant can withdraw his motion.
Then I'll withdraw my motion because I think it's on the record right now. People are watching. It's on YouTube. We want special ed we want all students back in the classroom, but we need to get special ed kids first. Everything has to be safe. So I'll withdraw my motion. I've said my piece.
That's
All right,
fine.
thank you.
My apologies for throwing something of a bomb into the meeting. It is not usually my desire.
That's why we have you as our legal counsel. Thank you, Mr. Adams. All right, so Next on our agenda is item number C, discussion and/or vote to approve resolution SCPR 8 2020-15. It's software licensing contracts with IXL Learning and Ingenuity for distant learning. Normally, this is held in fiscal, and fiscal makes a recommendation, but because we wanted to have a robust executive session meeting tonight, this is coming on our regular agenda. Mr. Salvatore, do you want me to read the resolution or would you like to?
Yes, could you please, Mr. DeMonica,
Okay.
I've got like 4 screens pulled up here. It'll probably take me about 8 minutes.
That's
to
fine.
pull
So
one
this,
back up. Thank you.
this is a resolution authorizing and empowering the Cumberland School Committee to execute a contract with IXL Learning of San Mateo, California for site licenses for grades pre-K through 8 for math and ELA in an amount not to exceed $111,622 and Ingenuity of Scottsdale, Arizona in an amount not to exceed $47,000. I do know, speaking with the business manager today, that these items still need to be purchased and that they are proprietary programs that we have purchased in the past. And that's why there is no list of bidders here, because they're just the one bidder for the software that we have. So unless there's any questions in regards to this, I need a motion and a second to approve SCPR 8 2020-15. Mrs. Friedman?
Yeah, so the Edgenuity contract, I think, is like we've always had at the high school, I think. The IXL, I thought that was, we were extending that, purchasing more licenses when we were considering doing the virtual academy. If we're not doing the virtual academy as, previously stated, do we still need those numbers of licenses at this increased cost for IXL?
Sure. Mr. Demana, could you answer that one?
Sure. Good evening. Yes, Dr. Santa and I have had conversations as well as our coordinators, and we feel like keeping a tool like IXL or bringing in a tool like IXL just provides more of a toolbox for our teachers, whether we're in school and or virtual. It's something that we had a few years ago. We lost it due to funding, and I think it's imperative that we bring it back. And you can also hear from Dr. Santa on the issue as well.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Demana. Mrs. Santa?
Sure.
Did you want to comment on this?
Yes, because what we really talked about is with the inconsistency, and actually, Mrs. Friedman, I believe this is addressing your concern about achievement. So the biggest concern and why I really passionately implored that we continue to consider this type of a tool is because whether kids are in school or out of school, we need something consistent that they're using in both environments, whether it's virtual and it is on the web, but whether they're doing that as part of their school day or whether they're doing it at home, that we have a consistent tool in order to monitor how they're working towards the standards. Because IXL is based on the grade level standards and the Common Core state standards. We know how they're progressing on that. The other thing we also know is if they're not progressing in those areas, and it'll be able for us to better pinpoint instruction in the areas where we may not be doing well. And in fact, that if it's a distance learning issue, we would be able to pinpoint even better what we need to work on prior to any type of formal testing from the state. So I thought it was incredibly important that we have a stable tool that's being used in all these different environments in which we can have some really robust data on state standards. That being said, it's a tool. It's not going to take place of direct instruction that we're talking about with Google Meets and increasing that and creating some accountability around that with teachers. It is a tool, and I'm highly recommending it so that we have that data in our back pocket.
Okay, Mrs. Freeman, does that kind of help you? Great.
Mr.
Anyone
Chair,
else?
I would like to make a motion for approval, passage.
Mr. Salvatore makes a motion to approve SCPR 8 2020-15. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Collins. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it 7-0. I just want to read this there, so you said cost 20,000 are included in the fiscal year 21 budget at the high school, and the balance of 138,622 will be submitted for approval to be paid with CRFs. So I just want to make sure we read that into the record as well. Okay, next is comments from the public. Mr. Chandler, once again, could you open up the channel for the public, please?
So if anybody has any comments, they can use *9 to raise their hand or throw on the phone, or you could just raise your hand from the application. And it looks like we have 2 people with their hands raised. The first one is 3 people now. Erica Sanzi is the first one.
Okay, Ms. Sanzi, welcome.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I haven't watched one of these in a long time, and I want to thank you guys for your time. I first want to really thank Karen Friedman. I've heard her speak about achievement and achievement gaps and actual student learning, and it's really, I haven't heard much of that during this meeting, and it has to be the focus. Now that we have voted on something, it does seem like it has to be the focus. I'm extremely concerned about the comments from Mr. Collins about achievement. Well, it's the test scores and they'll probably cancel RICAS anyway. We have students in this district who are desperately in need of reading instruction. Our subgroup data is heartbreaking in many cases. So I am imploring you, now that we have a decision made, to really focus on what Karen spoke about, which was actual student outcomes, student achievement gaps, and what our most vulnerable students need, which I know on the special ed front you've been doing. I also wanted to say, I am incredibly, incredibly angry at the moment that there was even a conversation to table the homeschooling requests. Parents are understandably under incredible stress at the moment, and many of them want out of the system because they just want something that feels more stable, more definitive, and it's none of our business why they want to do that. So I want to thank you. I've already done it publicly on Twitter, but to the 5 of you who voted not to do that, thank you, because 4 pages of homeschooling requests is a sign that parents are desperate. And the idea that we would table them is one of the most disrespectful things I have seen happen in a public meeting in a long time. Lastly, can you guys just clarify if IXL is going to be the curriculum or if it's going to be something supplemental? There are definitely rumors floating that I suspect aren't true. And I see Karen shaking her head, but can someone just speak to what the IXL is going to be? And also, Bob Mitchell, Mr. Mitchell, Dr. Mitchell, I forget. Can you also just address, has there been any talk at the state level of a distance learning program that can be used statewide? I know that some places are looking at Edgenuity statewide in K-12, because I have to say, I've got 2 students that are in North Cumberland Middle School. I am not feeling optimistic and confident at the moment, but I would if I felt like there was a distance learning curriculum in place that was standard, that we knew had been battle tested and vetted, and that we also knew was sort of happening consistently. I think to expect teachers to now suddenly, they've heard tonight on August 27th that they're going to start virtually. I think that we're putting a burden on them that is almost impossible to surmount. And if there's any possible way to do something that's standardized across the board, I know that and I think many people would be most grateful. Thank you all again. I know this is incredibly difficult and I appreciate your time and the work that you're doing.
Mr. Chair, can I respond since she named me? Ms. Sandy, I don't know you. Ms. Sandy, I'm the only actual teacher on the school committee sitting here right now.
Yeah.
So I actually know student achievement firsthand. So when I was asking about student achievement, just so we're clear, I was looking for clarification because I was looking to see what Ms. Friedman was talking about. I actually sit on this achievement subcommittee with Ms. Friedman and Ms. Waters, so I understand that full well. As for my homeschool motion, that was for an option because I was under the impression that homeschooling parents perhaps chose that option because they were nervous and I just tabled it. I motioned to table it just to give them more time. So if you actually, as you know though, but when it came to the actual vote, we passed that 7-0. So that's not an issue either. So I just want to clarify that So if you have any other questions, you can
All
email
right.
me directly. I'll be happy to talk to you about that.
Can we, Mr. Demotta or Mr. Mitchell, answer that about the IXL learning? Is that the supplement or is it?
It's only supplemental, Mr. Chair. It is
Okay.
merely a tool. We plan on utilizing our core curriculum to the best of our ability in a distance learning situation.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Mitchell, anything statewide?
No, I have not heard anything of substance in any of our superintendent meetings about anything like that. There may be, I have not heard anything. And I know that I think Dr. Santa wanted to share something as well.
Sure, go ahead, Dr. Santa.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify that that misinformation on IXL came from that very first virtual, that very first survey that was sent out regarding Virtual Academy, where we only, at that time, only thought we had about 257 families. I remember that number clearly, that were going to stay home and do distance learning. When we realized that the number was much higher, and I feel like we've talked about this a lot, but that old news from a long time ago doesn't seem to disperse. When we realized there was going to be that many, we went more to more like the distance learning that we had in the spring, with the addition of continuing with the IXL to use that as a tool, a supplementary tool, just like I discussed a little while ago, so that we can monitor kids' progress. We plan to continue to use the Wonders reading, the Eureka Math, all the curriculum that we typically use. And then in middle school and high school, we are purchased, and was just agreed to purchase Edgenuity. So we have the content from 6th grade through 12th grade, including transition services. The reason why we didn't go Edgenuity across the board from preschool, actually they don't have preschool, from kindergarten up, is the fact that it's a different type of site license and more per each, and much harder for us to manage as a district. So hopefully that answers that question. And with the understanding that I know that the high school plans to put out some additional information regarding how virtual and distance learning could happen at the high school, including using Edgenuity for independent coursework. I think that could be considered the middle school. And just to support the school committee, I believe the homeschool issue was not intended to be insulting, but more an opportunity that when parents hear different information, that they can change their mind. I believe that was really the intent. And we have heard from some families already clarifying and changing their minds. So I think that was the intent of that. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Norm?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Santa. That was the exact. But I mean, being on the school committee, we expect criticism, and it just bounces right off.
Well, I don't think it's criticism. I think it's, Mrs. Sanzi used to be on the school committee, and she's very well versed in education throughout
I
the
agree.
country, and her homes are read.
Yeah, I would like to add that.
Mr. Demonica, may I please, I hate to do this, but it has always been my advice to the school committee, and I want the public to hear this too, that once we begin to answer questions, and I mean no disrespect to the question, this tends to go right over my head. I'm just a lawyer. But once we begin to answer a person's question, we need to answer everybody's question. So my advice is always, if a member of the public has a question and they want to talk with their school committee members, every single one of them, they have your email, they have your numbers. If they want to make a comment, and even if they want to pose a question that is generally left rhetorical, that is usually best, because once we start going down the road of answering a question, we also begin to change what's on the agenda. We begin to address things that are not agended. So just so the public is clear, as the lawyer, it's not that I think as a lawyer, the committee shouldn't be your committee, members of the public, but this is a public meeting where they are doing their business, and part of that business is hearing from you. It's not necessarily having a discussion. That can happen, but that's not generally the purpose, at least from this lawyer's perspective, of a public meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Mr. Chandler, the next person.
Yep, so the next person is S. Carp, would like to speak.
Hello? Hello, there you go. Hi, could you state your name and address for the record, please? You are muted, sir. You have to unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Scott Carpenter. I live at 98
Scott.
Thomas Layton Boulevard in Cumberland. I'm a lifelong resident of this town. My two older children went through Cumberland High School. I presently have an 11th grade, going into 11th grade at Cumberland High School. A couple of comments that I have. I want to thank Mrs. Friedman for kind of standing up for the rest of us that want all the information before we make a decision. I'd like to say as a parent that it's kind of disheartening to me that you as a school committee have made my decision what I think is right for my child, and that is to go to school. We talk about re-entering school. So my question would be, and I know you're not going to answer it, but would be, what is the specific re-entry criteria to go back to school? And I know you don't have that right now, but when are you going to release that specific re-entry criteria? And then the other part about virtual learning, I watched my son and some of his friends when they were here doing virtual learning, had great teachers work their you-know-whats off to do the best they could, but you are not getting anywhere near the level of education virtually that you are in person. And then my next question would be, if we were going to allow some students to enter the building, isn't that the exact definition of segregation? Prioritizing one group above another? Because many students need to be in school. And then my part of that, off of that would be, I thought there was a safety and ventilation problem. So if there's a safety and ventilation problem, how are we going to allow some students in, but not other students? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. We can reach you offline. Thank you. Mr. Chandler, anyone else?
Pete Cannon.
Who?
The name says Pete Cannon.
Okay, hello, Pete Cannon. Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Patrick Cannon. I live at 105 Arnold Drive. And I thank you for taking my comments. But particularly, I want to thank committee members Friedman and Salvatore, who were the only members who I heard tonight actually raising the education of our children as a factor in their decision. This committee, I think, speaking from the heart tonight, has failed the children of Cumberland. It may have failed them all summer. We knew in the spring that we were going to be dealing with this virus. We also knew that many of our schools may have been in need of some maintenance. So what did we do? And this is the question I want to know. What did we do over the past several months to address these concerns? I find it disingenuous on August 27th to come here and say that we don't have time to address an issue when we could have begun addressing these issues as early as May, when we knew that we were done with school for the rest of the year and that the virus would still be with us come the fall. I have two additional questions I'd like to have answers to. First, to echo the questions previously, what exactly are those criteria for return to school? There were criteria that were, I believe, set by the state, and now I'm hearing that those criteria are insufficient. So where exactly do those criteria fall short? I find it particularly alarming that a majority of this committee is claiming that our buildings have inadequate air quality, but have not even yet seen the air quality report. So I have a hard time having trust that this committee is going to rely on objective criteria for reopening when it's making a decision from the outset that is in absence of any kind of objective starting point. And second, finally, I want to know what metrics we are going to use to show that remote learning is an effective means of educating our children. I'm troubled by the comments that I heard tonight about perhaps canceling RICAS exam again. And I know that's not necessarily this committee's decision, but why would we be looking to do that here? Are we afraid that objective measures will show just how badly we failed our children if we go to distance learning this year? I think we owe it to our children and frankly to successive generations who may have to deal with issues like this in the future to show exactly what the impact distance learning has on our children's education. And the only way we can do that is with objective measures like a standardized test. So I'd like the committee to consider those and get back to me if you can.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chandler, anyone else?
Yep, we have Vanessa Wagenheim.
Okay, let me switch screens. There you go. Hi, Vanessa.
Hi.
Can you state your name
Hear
and
me?
address for the record? Yes, we can.
All right. I live at 166 Hattie Ave in Cumberland. I just wanted to take a second and thank the school committee for really considering the safety concerns for not only students, but also staff. I know it's a difficult decision. I know it's very hard for families to now have to figure out and juggle things, but I do not feel that any school honestly is ready to start in person come September 14th. I think we need more time, and I think this is going to allow us the time. So I just wanted to publicly thank you because I know you guys are going to be getting hit hard. It's already starting, but from the bottom of my heart, thank you for thinking about the safety. There'll be time to figure it out because now we have that time, and now teachers can dedicate this time to making distant learning better. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chandler, anyone else?
Paula Goodrup.
Hello?
Paula,
Hi, thank you
Hi,
for.
Paula, go ahead. Can you state your name and address for the record,
I just
please?
want to reiterate that I appreciate the efforts.
Paula,
that
we
you
need,
took
we need your name and address for the record, please.
Mr. Collins and Mr. Ferrillo, and I apologize if I mispronounced
you-
your name. I think it is in the best interest of our students' safety. And the people that are complaining tonight, I often wonder if they've actually participated in any of the committees that have been taking place over the summer. I personally have been working with McCourt Middle School on improving their distance learning with teachers and parents and Dr. Masterson. And I have been thoroughly impressed with them being receptive to parents' feedback, what we can do to improve it from the teacher's perspective. So I just want to take a moment and thank you all for the courageous decision you made tonight.
Paula, could we have your address for the record, please? Hello? Okay, Mr. Chandler, next, if they don't want to respond with their name and address, I don't want to do it, but you're going to have to stop the mic so we at least know who we're talking with. Thank you. Mr. Chandler, is there anyone else?
okay, we have a Jillian.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Jillian. Can we have your name and address for the record first?
Sure, Jillian Folger Hartwell. And my address is 11 Angus Drive, Cumberland.
Great, thank you. Go right ahead.
As a parent of a student in North Cumberland Middle School and Cumberland High School, I have a senior going into Cumberland High School. I have an 8th grader in North Cumberland this year. I'm quite disappointed by the decision for virtual learning. I think our children are going to suffer emotionally and educationally as a result of not being able to return to school. I think that we should have waited for the governor to make her decision, and we should have looked at the science and been brave enough to do that. I think our children in town are going to suffer because of this. And at some point, we all have to get back to safe and cautious, but regular life.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chandler?
She was the last person with their hand up. At this time, there's nobody else.
Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to school committee comments, school liaison reports. Is there any school committee members that would like to make a comment or have a school liaison report? Anyone here? I'm Mrs. Waters, go ahead.
I understand the passion of the parents. I truly do. And it wasn't a hard, it was a very hard vote to make. I stand by my vote, and I'm happy to discuss it further with any parents. But what I really want to make sure it doesn't get lost in the shuffle is I just would like to recognize Mrs. Monahan for 30 years of service that she's had to Cumberland School Department, and I don't want that to get lost in all of this other discussion about school reopening. 3 of my children had Mrs. Monahan for music. She was an incredible advocate for music in our school department, and I just want to wish her the best in her retirement.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have a comment tonight? I mean, then I'll end it tonight. I mean, what we do is hard in itself. The superintendent and Mr. Damana, Dr. Santa, and everyone involved in the Cumberland school system has worked very hard to come up with some plans for the school committee to make an informed decision. And I think tonight, even though it was only a 4-3 vote, that we all want the best for the school children of Cumberland. And we need to implement whatever happens with E&E's report that we get and move forward and get every school children and teacher into the school buildings as soon as possible. I just want to thank the mayor for reaching out to the superintendent about helping us to fund some of these equipment items that we know we're going to need to put into the schools to make them safer. And, you know, safety has been our #1 priority going forward. And I think we've all given up on the governor making those decisions for us because she's so wishy-washy in her, you know, deliberations for us. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you. All right, with that being said, Mr. Mitchell, do we need to go back into executive session?
No, we do not, Mr. Chairman.
We do not. I need a motion to adjourn the meeting tonight.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Collins.
Second.
Second by Mr. Salvatore. Don't point. Not polite. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it 7-0. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.